Her life was a relentless cycle of exhaustion, every dollar earned at the rundown diner barely covering the mountain of medical bills for her ailing mother. Hope was a luxury Emily couldn't afford until one chaotic night when a rude, arrogant billionaire stormed into her diner, demanding special treatment and spewing insults. Emily, tired but resolute, did the unthinkable. She stood her ground and refused to serve him, knowing full well it could cost her job, her only lifeline. What happened the very next morning wasn't just a surprise, it was a seismic shift that would unravel everything she thought she knew about kindness, courage, and the true meaning of power, especially when a man in a crisp suit handed her a simple folder that held the keys to her entire future. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The scent of stale coffee and sizzling onions was as familiar to Emily as her own reflection. It clung to her clothes, permeated her skin, and felt like a permanent fixture in the very air she breathed. At 26, Emily Davies carried the weight of the world on her slender shoulders, a burden far heavier than any diner tray. Her days, and often her nights, were a relentless blur of double shifts at Mel's Diner, a greasy spoon establishment that time had seemingly forgotten. The linoleum floors were chipped, the vinyl booths cracked, and the flickering neon sign outside promised good food, fair prices, with a tired flicker that mirrored Emily's own dwindling energy. Every dollar Emily earned, every tip painstakingly collected, went directly to support her ailing mother. Mrs. Davies, once a vibrant, laughing woman, was now confined to a small, rented apartment, battling a chronic illness that gnawed away at their meager savings and her daughter's fragile peace of mind. The medical bills were a relentless avalanche, burying them deeper into a hole from which escape seemed impossible. Emily had foregone college, deferred every personal dream, and poured every ounce of her youthful vigor into keeping her mother comfortable, into simply keeping them afloat. Hope, for Emily, wasn't a tangible thing. It was a distant, flickering star she rarely had the luxury to gaze upon. Tonight was a particularly grueling shift. A sudden downpour had driven an unexpected surge of customers into Mel's, leaving Emily scrambling between tables, her feet aching in her worn work shoes. The diner was a cacophony of clattering dishes, shouted orders, and the low murmur of conversations. Despite the chaos, Emily moved with a practiced grace, her movements efficient, her smile, though tired, genuinely warm. She prided herself on treating every customer with respect, regardless of their demeanor or their order. It was a small act of rebellion against the weariness that constantly threatened to consume her. As the dinner rush began to subside, leaving a lingering hum of activity, the diner door swung open with an almost theatrical creak. A man entered, and he did not merely walk in, he strode in, radiating an aura of self-importance that seemed to push the very air aside. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark, custom-tailored suit that looked utterly out of place in the humble diner. His dark hair was slicked back, and his jaw was set with an air of arrogant confidence. His eyes, dark and piercing, swept across the room with a dismissive disdain, as if he found himself in a place far beneath his consideration. The line for the counter, though short, still existed. Without a moment's hesitation, the man bypassed it entirely, pushing past a bewildered elderly woman who clutched her worn purse tighter. He then slammed his hand on the counter, demanding attention. "Service! Now!" he barked, his voice loud and imperious, cutting through the general diner hum. The elderly woman, startled, stumbled backward, almost knocking over a sugar dispenser. "Excuse me, young man," she exclaimed, her voice thin with indignation. "There's a line here." The man turned on her, his face contorted in an expression of pure disdain. "Do you know who I am?" he snarled, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't wait in lines. My time is far more valuable than yours, old woman. get out of my way." A hush fell over the immediate vicinity. Customers, who had been quietly eating, paused, their forks hovering mid-air. The scene was uncomfortable, a stark display of arrogance clashing with the quiet dignity of everyday life. Emily, who had just emerged from the kitchen with a fresh pot of coffee, witnessed the entire exchange. A slow, simmering anger began to build within her, pushing back against her exhaustion. This wasn't about spilled coffee or a raw mortar. This was about fundamental human decency. Her mother had instilled in her a deep-seated belief in treating everyone with respect, regardless of their station in life. This man was violating that principle with every arrogant word. She placed the coffee pot down with a deliberate thud, the sound echoing slightly in the sudden silence. She walked calmly towards the counter, her movements unhurried, her expression carefully neutral, even though a tempest was brewing within her. "Sir," Emily said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the tense atmosphere. "There's a line. Everyone here waits their turn." The man turned his piercing gaze on her, his dark eyes narrowing. He clearly hadn't expected to be challenged by a mere waitress. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" he sneered, his tone dismissive. "I need to place an order, and I need it now. I don't have time for your quaint little diner protocols." "My name is Emily, and I'm the waitress serving this section," she replied, her voice unwavering. "And regardless of who you are, or how valuable your time might be, rudeness is not tolerated at Mel's Diner. You just insulted another customer, and you cut in line. That's not how we do things here." "Are you refusing to serve me?" the man asked, his voice low, dangerous, a clear challenge. He seemed genuinely incredulous that anyone, especially someone in her position, would dare to defy him. At that moment, Stan, the diner manager, a nervous, perpetually sweating man in his 50s, burst out of his office, alerted by the unusual silence and the raised voices. He took in the scene, his eyes widening in alarm as he recognized the impeccably dressed, furious man. Stan was known for his eagerness to avoid conflict, especially with potentially high-paying customers. "Emily, what's going on here?" Stan hissed, rushing forward, his face pale. He quickly turned to the man, bowing slightly. "Sir, my apologies. Please, ignore her. She's new. What can I get for you?" The man's gaze flickered to Stan, then back to Emily, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Your waitress here seems to believe she can dictate terms to me. I asked for service, and she refused. I believe I just asked if she was refusing to serve me." Emily met his gaze, her chin held high. The pressure from Stan, the palpable fear radiating from her manager, was immense. Her job, her only means of supporting her mother, hung by a thread. But a deeper conviction, an ingrained sense of right and wrong, refused to allow her to back down. She thought of her mother, of the quiet strength with which she faced her illness, and Emily knew she couldn't betray that strength by cowering before this man's arrogance. "Yes, sir," Emily stated, her voice calm, clear, and resolute. "I am refusing to serve you. Your behavior is unacceptable. I'm going to ask you to leave, now." A shocked silence descended once more, thicker than before. Stan let out a small, strangled gasp, his eyes wide with horror. The man's face, initially contorted in fury, underwent a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. His eyes, still dark and intense, seemed to narrow not in anger, but in a strange, calculating scrutiny. He stared at Emily for a long moment, a peculiar expression crossing his features, a mixture of disbelief, fury, and something else entirely, something oddly composed. Then, without another word, without a shout or a further threat, the man turned on his heel. He strode out of the diner with the same imperious confidence with which he had entered, the door creaking shut behind him, leaving a lingering scent of expensive cologne and an air of stunned disbelief. Stan immediately turned on Emily, his face flushed with rage and fear. "Emily, are you insane? Do you have any idea who that was? That was, that was Mr. Sterling, Robert Sterling. He owns half the city. You just cost us a fortune. You're fired, fired," he sputtered, his voice rising to a frantic pitch. Emily simply stood there, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She felt a wave of exhaustion, but beneath it, a quiet, almost defiant sense of peace. She had lost her job, her lifeline. But she hadn't compromised herself. She had stood up for what was right. She had protected the dignity of a vulnerable customer. She looked at Stan, her gaze steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm sorry, Stan, but some things are more important than a customer's money, no matter how much they have. No one deserves to be treated that way." Stan continued to rant, but his words seemed to fade into a distant hum. Emily felt a profound weariness settle over her. She knew the consequences. She would spend the rest of the night worrying, calculating how she would find another job, how she would pay her mother's bills. The future, which had always been precarious, now seemed to teeter on the edge of a vast, dark abyss. She cleaned up the counter mechanically, her mind already racing with desperate solutions. The next morning, the gray light of dawn seeped through Emily's apartment window, revealing the stark reality of her situation. She hadn't slept well, her mind replaying the confrontation, the dismissal, the desperate scramble for alternatives. Her mother, sensing Emily's distress, had tried to offer comforting words, but the weight of their financial precariousness hung heavy in the small apartment. Against her better judgment, Emily found herself walking towards Mel's diner. She knew she was fired, but a part of her needed closure, needed to pick up her last paycheck, needed to face the place that had been both her prison and her sanctuary for so long. The neon sign, stubbornly flickering even in the morning light, seemed to mock her. As she approached the diner door, a sleek black sedan, far too expensive for this part of town, pulled up to the curb. The tinted window rolled down smoothly, revealing a man in a crisp, dark suit. He was impeccably dressed, with an air of quiet efficiency. He was not Robert Sterling, the rude billionaire from last night, but he clearly exuded the same aura of importance. The man stepped out of the car, carrying a single, thick, manila folder. He walked directly towards Emily, his expression unreadable, but his movements purposeful. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. Was he here to rub salt in the wound? To ensure she never worked in this town again? A fresh wave of dread washed over her. "Emily Davies?" the man asked, his voice calm, polite but firm. "Yes," Emily replied, her voice a little shaky. The man extended the manila folder towards her. "My name is Arthur. I'm Mr. Sterling's personal assistant. He sent me here with this for you." Emily took the folder, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the smooth, thick paper. She felt a surge of confusion. What could Robert Sterling possibly want with her now? A lawsuit? A formal complaint? "What is this?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Arthur offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Just open it, Ms. Davies." With a trembling hand, Emily opened the folder. The first document she saw was a legal deed, crisp and official. Her eyes widened, scanning the fine print, her breath catching in her throat. The words swam before her, then snapped into stark focus. Full ownership transfer, Mel's Diner, to Emily Davies. She blinked, convinced she was dreaming, or that the lack of sleep had finally driven her mad. She looked up at Arthur, her mind reeling, utterly bewildered. "What? This can't be real. This is a joke, right?" Arthur's smile broadened slightly. "It's quite real, Ms. Davies. All the necessary paperwork is inside, fully executed. The previous owner, Mr. Henderson, has already signed off. He's been looking to sell for a while. Mr. Sterling handled everything last night. Emily's gaze darted back to the folder, then to the diner itself, the chipped paint, the flickering sign. It was hers. The rundown diner, the place that had been her cage, was now, inexplicably, her property. As her eyes scanned further into the folder, her gaze landed on a single, neatly folded sheet of paper. It was a note, written in a bold, decisive hand, the signature at the bottom unmistakably Robert Sterling. Emily read the note, her eyes tracing each word. Ms. Davies, last night you exemplified a quality I rarely encounter in my world: unwavering integrity. Most people, when faced with someone of my perceived stature or with the threat of professional reprisal, would buckle. They would compromise their principles for personal gain, or out of fear. You did not. You stood your ground. You defended a vulnerable customer. You upheld a standard of decency that far outweighs any fleeting profit. You displayed courage and leadership in its purest form, without knowing who I was or what the consequences might be. I have spent my life building an empire, making tough decisions, but often I have questioned whether true leadership still existed. Untainted by ambition or fear, you showed me it does. Mel's Diner was on the market. I observed your interaction, and I made a decision. It's yours now. Consider it a testament to what real conviction can achieve. Real leaders don't back down. Sincerely, Robert Sterling. Emily stood there, clutching the folder, the crisp morning air suddenly feeling lighter, the world around her sharper, more vibrant. The note, the ownership documents, the very idea of it all spun through her mind. The rude billionaire, the man she had defied, had not sought revenge, but had instead bestowed upon her an unimaginable gift, a direct consequence of her unyielding principles. Her tired eyes, for the first time in years, welled up, not with tears of exhaustion or despair, but with a profound, overwhelming sense of shock, hope, and an exhilarating, terrifying realization. Her life, and her mother's future, had just irrevocably changed. The rundown diner, once a symbol of her struggle, was now the unlikely cornerstone of her new, astonishing destiny. The manila folder felt impossibly heavy in Emily's hands, a paradox of flimsy paper and monumental implications. She stared at the words, "Full ownership transfer, Mel's Diner," to Emily Davies, then at Robert Sterling's crisp, decisive handwriting in the note, the phrase, "Real leaders don't back down," echoing in her mind. Her entire world, once so rigidly defined by relentless struggle, had just been upended in the space of a single, bewildering morning. Arthur, Robert Sterling's personal assistant, observed her reaction with a polite, almost detached professionalism. "Mr. Sterling prefers efficiency, Ms. Davies," he stated, his voice even. "He handles all his philanthropic endeavors and his unique investments with the same dispatch." The diner's previous owner was more than happy to facilitate a rapid transfer. All debts cleared. Property taxes paid up to the next quarter. You'll find a separate account established in your name for initial operating capital, along with contacts for a new supplier network. Mr. Sterling's team has vetted for Dow. You. Emily could only stare, her mind struggling to reconcile the impossible generosity with the arrogant man from the night before. "But why? Why me?" she finally managed, her voice still a disbelieving whisper. He was so angry. Arthur's lips curved into a slightly more perceptible smile. "Mr. Sterling has a peculiar way of testing character, Ms. Davies. He often places himself in challenging situations, observes reactions. Last night, he found himself unimpressed by many, until you. He values conviction, honesty, and a spine. He saw those compound qualities in you, unwavering despite the pressure and the obvious threat to your livelihood. He recognized a true leader, and Mr. Sterling believes in investing in true leaders." He paused, then added, "He also believes in giving back, in his own, unconventional way. He's been quietly acquiring and revitalizing distressed properties in this city for some time, often gifting them to individuals who demonstrate exceptional potential or integrity, who he believes can make a genuine difference in their communities. Your diner, Ms. Davies, was simply the latest, and perhaps the most unexpected of his gifts." Emily felt a dizzying mix of emotions: shock, immense gratitude, and a daunting wave of responsibility. The diner, once her burden, was now her responsibility, a colossal one. She thought of her mother, her face still etched with worry despite Emily's attempts to reassure her this morning. This was their salvation. This was hope, tangible and overwhelming. "Thank you," Emily murmured, her voice thick with emotion, tears pricking at her eyes. "Please, thank Mr. Sterling. I don't know how to even begin to thank him." "Mr. Sterling doesn't seek thanks, Ms. Davies," Arthur replied, his voice softening slightly. "He expects results. He expects you to uphold the values he saw in you. He expects you to lead." With a final polite nod, Arthur turned, re-entered the sleek sedan, and drove away, leaving Emily alone on the curb, clutching the folder, the weight of the new reality settling upon her. She walked slowly towards the diner door, the flickering neon sign no longer a symbol of mockery, but a challenge, a beacon. This rundown place, with its chipped linoleum and worn booths, was now hers. Every cracked tile, every grease stain, every squeaky hinge. It was all hers to transform. The first person Emily encountered inside was Stan, her former manager, busily wiping down the counter, his face pale and haggard. He looked up, startled to see her. "Emily? What are you doing here? I told you, you're—" He trailed off, remembering his furious dismissal from last night. Emily held up the manila folder, its contents still feeling surreal. "Stan," she began, her voice steady, a newfound authority subtly infusing her tone. "I'm not fired. This diner, it's mine now. Robert Sterling transferred ownership to me." Stan's jaw dropped. His eyes bulged, disbelief warring with incomprehension. "What? Robert Sterling? The billionaire? He gave you the diner? But why?" Emily simply gestured to the note inside the folder. "He said, 'Real leaders don't back down.' He saw something in me." She knew it sounded like a fairy tale, even to her own ears. The news spread through the diner's small staff like wildfire. The cooks, the other waitresses, even the grizzled dishwashers, gathered around, their faces a mix of masse, disbelief, wonder, and nascent excitement. Their collective skepticism slowly gave way to a sense of shared hope. Emily, their quiet, hard-working colleague, was now their boss. And her unlikely ascent seemed to infuse a fresh energy into the tired establishment. Emily knew she couldn't simply walk in and make drastic changes overnight. This was her mother's lifeline, their chance and a stable future. Her first priority was to assess the diner's actual financial state, beyond the initial operating capital Robert Sterling had provided. She spent the entire day poring over old ledgers, the faint scent of stale grease lingering in the dusty office. The diner had been teetering on the brink of bankruptcy for years, Stan's lax management and the owner's disinterest slowly eroding its profitability. That evening, Emily sat at one of the cracked booths, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands, looking around the empty diner. It was still Mel's, tired and worn. But now, she saw it with new eyes filled with possibilities. The chipped linoleum could be replaced, the booths reupholstered, the menu updated, but carefully, retaining the diner's comforting familiarity. She envisioned a clean, inviting space, a place where genuine warmth and good food would draw in customers, not just out of habit, but out of genuine desire. Her first act as owner, beyond the initial financial audit, was to gather the staff. She stood before them, not as their former colleague, but as their new leader, a mantle she was still cautiously learning to wear. Stan, surprisingly, was present, still looking shell-shocked but quietly attentive. "This diner," Emily began, her voice a little nervous but firm, "has always been a part of this community. It has potential, real potential, but it needs a lot of work. And I can't do it alone. I need all of you." She looked at each of them, her gaze steady. "I understand this is a shock, and I know there might be questions, doubts, but I promise you this: I will always lead with integrity. I will treat every one of you with respect, and together we will turn Mel's Diner into something truly special, a place that reflects the best of what we can be." She looked at Stan. "Stan, your job isn't gone, but your role will change. I need your knowledge of the operations, the suppliers, the local customers. You'll be assisting me in a supervisory capacity, focusing on inventory and day-to-day operations. But from now on, decisions will be made differently. Customer service, respect, and quality will be our top priorities." Stan, surprisingly, nodded, a glimmer of relief and a grudging respect in his eyes. He had known the diner was failing, had felt the weight of its decline. Perhaps, he thought, this unexpected turn of events, this remarkable young woman, was exactly what Mel's needed. Emily spent the next few weeks working harder than she ever had, but now it was for herself, for her mother, for a future she was actively building. She continued to work shifts, not just to save on labor costs, but to truly understand the rhythm of the diner, to connect with her customers, to lead by example. She researched local suppliers for fresh ingredients, negotiated better deals, and began a slow, deliberate process of revitalization. A fresh coat of paint brightened the walls. New, comfortable seating replaced the cracked booths. The menu, still featuring classic diner fare, introduced healthier, locally sourced options, subtly elevating the quality without losing the diner's charm. The initial operating capital from Robert Sterling was a crucial buffer, allowing her to invest in improvements without immediate financial strain. She hired a part-time marketing student from the local college to help with social media, subtly spreading the word about the new Mel's. Slowly, steadily, the diner began to buzz with a renewed energy. Old regulars, initially curious, found themselves pleasantly surprised by the improved quality and the brighter atmosphere. New customers, drawn by the subtle buzz, discovered a hidden gem. Emily's mother, initially bewildered by the turn of events, blossomed under the newfound stability. The financial pressure lifted, she was able to access better medical care, and Emily even found time to take her to weekly physical therapy appointments. The weight on Emily's shoulders began to lighten, replaced by the exhilarating challenge of growth and creation. One quiet afternoon, almost 2 months after the fateful night, a sleek black sedan pulled up outside Mel's Diner. Arthur, Robert Sterling's personal boss, assistant, emerged, carrying a familiar-looking manila folder. Emily, who was wiping down the counter, felt a familiar pang of nervousness. Had she done something wrong? Was this a checkup? Arthur approached, his expression as unreadable as ever. "Ms. Davies," he began. "Mr. Sterling asked me to deliver this, and to extend his regards." Emily took the folder, her heart thumping. Inside, alongside a detailed report on the diner's vastly improved financial performance and customer satisfaction ratings, was another, shorter note from Robert Sterling. "Ms. Davies, I have been receiving regular updates on Mel's Diner. Your progress is exceptional. You have taken a struggling establishment and, through sheer force of will, intelligence, and integrity, transformed it into a thriving local institution. My initial assessment was correct. You are indeed a true leader. Consider this not just an observation, but an invitation. My company, Sterling Holdings, is always seeking individuals with your unique blend of vision and conviction. If you ever find yourself looking for a new challenge, a larger canvas for your talents, my door is always open. Keep leading. Sincerely, Robert Sterling. Emily read the note again, a profound sense of validation washing over her. It wasn't just about the diner anymore. It was about recognition, about a future she could never have dreamed of, a future where her capabilities were not merely recognized, but actively sought out. The rude billionaire, the man who had sparked her fear and defiance, had become her unexpected benefactor, her unlikely mentor, guiding her towards a destiny she was now ready to embrace. Mel's Diner was just the beginning. The girl who refused to back down was now poised to lead, ready to face any challenge, confident in the strength of her own integrity. The transformation of Mel's Diner under Emily's ownership was more than a cosmetic overhaul. It was a profound shift in its very soul. Emily, now fully immersed in her role as owner and operator, worked tirelessly, driven by a newfound passion and the sheer momentum of success. She didn't just manage Pa. She cultivated. The diner, once a symbol of her burden, became a vibrant extension of her personality, warm, welcoming, and rooted in genuine quality. The interior, though still retaining its classic diner charm, felt brighter, cleaner, and more inviting. The chipped linoleum was replaced with durable retro-patterned tiles. The cracked vinyl booths were reupholstered in a cheerful red and cream, lending a nostalgic yet fresh aesthetic. Emily, with a temerie, surprising eye for design, had introduced small, thoughtful touches. Fresh flowers on each table, soft, ambient lighting that replaced the harsh fluorescence, and a curated playlist of classic jazz and blues that added to the comforting atmosphere. The menu underwent a similar thoughtful evolution. While maintaining diner staples, Emily insisted on using locally sourced, fresh ingredients wherever possible. Her farm-toteable specials, featuring seasonal produce from nearby farms, became immensely popular. She introduced artisanal coffees and a selection of homemade pastries, personally overseeing their recipes. The quality of the food, combined with the genuinely attentive service, began to draw customers not just from the immediate neighborhood, but from across the city. Stan, her former manager, had, to Emily's surprise, adapted well to his new role as operations supervisor. He handled inventory, managed supplies, and dealt with minor day-to-day issues, deferring to Emily for all major decisions. He respected her vision and her unwavering commitment, recognizing that her leadership had resurrected the diner from the brink. The other staff members, feeling valued and empowered, thrived under Emily's fair and supportive management. Employee turnover plummeted, and a sense of shared purpose permeated the kitchen and dining area. Emily's mother, buoyed by the stable financial situation and Emily's renewed spirit, continued to improve. The stress of constant worry had lifted, allowing her to focus on her recovery. Emily ensured she had access to the best specialists and therapies, a luxury they could now afford. Their small apartment, once a place of quiet desperation, became a cozy haven filled with laughter and optimistic plans for the future. News of Mel's Diner's incredible turnaround and the extraordinary story behind it began to spread beyond local gossip. Food bloggers, drawn by the buzz, wrote glowing reviews. Local newspapers picked up the story, focusing on Emily's inspiring journey and the diner's phoenix-like resurgence. It wasn't just a diner anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, integrity, and unexpected opportunity. One afternoon, a journalist from a prominent national business magazine intrigued by the Robert Sterling connection, contacted Emily for an interview. Emily, initially hesitant to publicly discuss the specifics of Sterling's gift, eventually agreed, carefully framing the narrative to highlight the values of integrity and hard work, and giving credit to her entire team. The article, titled "From Waitress to Owner, the Diner That Defined True Leadership," became a viral sensation, propelling Emily and Mel's diner into the national spotlight. The publicity brought a new wave of customers, transforming Mel's into a bustling, beloved landmark. Emily, however, remained grounded. She still worked shifts, still personally greeted regulars, still made time to chat with new customers. She understood that the success wasn't just about the money, it was about the community, the people who had supported her, and the values that had guided her. Months turned into a year. Mel's diner was not just profitable, it was thriving. Emily had repaid Robert Sterling's initial operating capital, not out of obligation, but out of a deep sense of responsibility and gratitude. Though Arthur had simply informed her that Mr. Sterling considered it an investment that had paid off handsomely. Then came the call from Arthur. "Ms. Davies." His voice was as smooth and professional as ever. "Mr. Sterling requests your presence at Sterling Holdings headquarters next Tuesday at 10 a.m. He wishes to discuss a matter of significant opportunity." Emily's heart quickened. The note from Sterling, the one about a larger canvas, had always lingered in her mind. Now, the invitation had arrived. She felt a thrill of anticipation, mixed with a familiar flicker of apprehension. She was comfortable at Mel's. She had built something truly special. But the allure of a new challenge, the chance to apply her unique skills on a grander scale, was undeniable. She prepared meticulously for the meeting, reviewing Sterling Holdings' vast portfolio, researching their various ventures in urban development, technology, and sustainable initiatives. She knew that if Robert Sterling was extending this invitation, it would be for something substantial, something that would push her beyond her comfort zone. The Sterling Holdings headquarters was a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the city's financial district, a stark contrast to the cozy, familiar confines of Mel's diner. Emily, dressed in her best suit, felt a familiar surge of self-consciousness, but she pushed it down. She had faced down a billionaire in her own diner. She could certainly face him in his own office. Arthur greeted her in the opulent lobby, his polite smile unwavering. He led her through a series of quiet, luxurious corridors to a spacious corner office on a high floor, offering breathtaking panoramic views of the city. Robert Sterling stood by the window, his back to them, surveying his empire. He was dressed in a casual yet expensive polo shirt and tailored trousers, a surprisingly relaxed demeanor for such a powerful man. He turned as they entered. His dark eyes, no longer filled with arrogance, held a keen, assessing gaze that was both intelligent and surprisingly warm. "Ms. Davies," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." He gestured to a plush leather armchair opposite a large, sleek desk. Emily sat, her hands clasped in her lap. "Mr. Sterling," she replied, her voice steady. "It's an honor to be here, and thank you, again, for everything. Mel's Diner has truly transformed my life." Robert Sterling nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "It has, hasn't it? And you, Ms. Davies, have transformed it. I've been following your progress closely. The reviews, the community impact, the profitability. It's exceptional. You proved my assessment correct." He paused, then leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. "My company, Sterling Holdings, is embarking on a major new initiative. We're launching a comprehensive urban revitalization project in the underserved districts of this city. It's an ambitious endeavor, focusing on creating sustainable, community-centric businesses, fostering local talent, and improving the quality of life. It requires vision, integrity, and a leader who understands the ground level, who can connect with people, and build trust. He looked directly at Emily, his eyes piercing. I need someone to head this division. Someone with your unique blend of commercial acumen, an unwavering moral compass, and a proven ability to turn a struggling asset into a thriving enterprise. Someone who isn't afraid to stand their ground, even against overwhelming pressure. Someone who understands that real impact comes from nurturing people, not just profits. Ms. Davies, Robert Sterling continued, his voice resonating with conviction, I am offering you the position of Director of Community Development and Urban Renewal for Sterling Holdings. It's a senior executive role with significant resources, a large team, and the autonomy to truly make a difference in this city. Emily sat in stunned silence. The scope of the offer was immense, far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. From serving coffee in a rundown diner to leading a multi-million-dollar urban revitalization project for one of the most powerful men in the country. It was an overwhelming leap, a terrifying yet exhilarating challenge. Mr. Sterling, Emily finally said, her voice a little breathless. I'm incredibly honored, but I'm just a diner owner. My experience is limited to Mel's. Robert Sterling leaned back, a knowing smile playing on his lips. Your experience at Mel's, Ms. Davies, is precisely why I'm offering you this position. You didn't just manage a diner. You led a transformation. You navigated challenges, inspired a team, built a brand, and fostered a community, all while upholding your core values. Those are the qualities of a true leader, qualities that transcend any industry or title. He stood, walking back to the window, gazing out at the sprawling city below. This isn't about knowing every technical detail, Ms. Davies. It's about knowing how to lead, how to inspire, how to build. And those are skills you possess in abundance. The technical expertise we can teach, the character, that's innate. He turned back to her, his gaze unwavering. Take your time. Consider the offer. But know this, I believe you are the right person for this. I believe you have the capacity to make a profound difference. And I believe in giving true leaders the canvas they deserve. Emily looked around the opulent office, then out at the city, a vast landscape of challenges and opportunities. She thought of her mother, now healthier and happier, her relief at seeing Emily thriving. She thought of the journey, the single moment of defiance that had opened this impossible door. The girl who had refused to serve a rude billionaire had not just gained a diner, she had gained a destiny, a purpose far grander than she had ever dared to dream. The future, once a source of constant worry, now stretched before her, an exciting, boundless frontier. She knew her answer. The whirlwind that followed Emily's acceptance of the Director of Community Development and Urban Renewal position was exhilarating and daunting in equal measure. She had accepted Robert Sterling's offer, not with blind ambition, but with a deep sense of purpose. Her new office, a sleek, modern space within Sterling Holdings, was a stark contrast to the familiar scent of coffee and sizzling onions, now replaced by the crisp, clean air of innovation. Her first few months were a steep learning curve. She immersed herself in complex urban planning documents, detailed financial projections for multi-million-dollar projects, and intricate legal frameworks. Robert Sterling, true to his word, provided her with an exceptional team, experts in urban development, architecture, finance, and community engagement. He also ensured she had direct access to him, offering guidance, challenging her thinking, and pushing her to excel, but always with a firm, supportive hand. He wasn't just her boss, he was a mentor, shaping her innate leadership qualities into a formidable force. Emily's approach to urban renewal was fundamentally different from the traditional corporate model. She insisted on community-first initiatives, spending weeks immersing herself in the underserved districts, meeting with local residents, community leaders, and small business owners. She listened, truly listened to their needs, their aspirations, and their fears. Her background, her understanding of everyday struggles, gave her an authenticity that no detached executive could replicate. She brought a human element to large-scale development, ensuring that revitalization wasn't just about new buildings, but about nurturing the existing fabric of the community. One of her flagship projects was the Beacon Hill Revitalization Project, a vast, neglected district plagued by unemployment and dilapidated infrastructure. Traditional developers had shied away, seeing only liabilities. Emily saw potential. She envisioned a mixed-use development that would include affordable housing, green spaces, vocational training centers, and, crucially, incubator spaces for local small businesses. She proposed a community-owned grocery store that would source from local farmers, creating a sustainable food ecosystem within the district. During one particularly high-stakes presentation to the city council and potential investors, a seasoned, skeptical councilman challenged her on the financial viability of her community-centric model. "Ms. Davies," he stated, his voice laced with doubt, "your proposals are admirable, but they seem idealistic. Where's the significant return on investment in building community gardens and vocational training centers, rather than high-rise luxury condos?" Emily, now completely composed in these high-pressure environments, met his gaze without flinching. She had anticipated such questions. "Councilman," she began, her voice clear and confident, "the return on investment isn't just measured in immediate profit margins, it's measured in long-term sustainability, in social capital, and in human potential. A revitalized community, where residents are employed, healthy, and invested in their neighborhood, becomes a vibrant economic engine. Our vocational centers will create a skilled local workforce, reducing our labor costs and fostering local entrepreneurship. Our community gardens will provide fresh, affordable produce, improving health outcomes and reducing strain on healthcare systems. These are not idealistic concepts. They are strategic investments in human capital that yield exponential returns over time, attracting businesses, reducing crime, and increasing property values organically." She then presented detailed projections, illustrating how the initial investment, though larger in the short term than conventional development, would lead to a more stable, resilient, and ultimately more profitable ecosystem in the long run. She showcased data from similar successful community-led projects in other cities, her arguments backed by irrefutable facts and a passionate conviction. Robert Sterling, seated in the front row, watched her, a subtle, proud smile playing on his lips. He had seen this tenacity, this blend of integrity and sharp intellect, that night in Mel's diner. He knew he had made the right choice. The councilman, impressed by her detailed response and her unwavering conviction, eventually nodded. "Very compelling, Ms. Davies, very compelling indeed." The Beacon Hill project received overwhelming approval, securing crucial funding and widespread community support. Emily threw herself into its execution, working closely with local residents to ensure their voices were heard at every stage of the planning and development. She organized town hall meetings, established community advisory boards, and personally oversaw the groundbreaking ceremonies, her hands-on approach earning her deep respect and trust. Her influence at Sterling Holdings grew rapidly. She was not just a director, she was a rising star, a visionary leader who proved that profit and purpose were not mutually exclusive. She earned the respect of her peers and the admiration of her team, all of whom recognized her integrity and her genuine commitment to making a positive impact. Mel's Diner understands continued capable management, and Emily's overarching guidance continued to thrive. It remained a beloved local institution, a testament to her roots and a constant reminder of the day her life irrevocably changed. Emily still visited regularly, often stepping behind the counter to pour coffee for old regulars, a grounding ritual that kept her connected to the very core of her journey. Her mother's health had stabilized significantly, The best medical care, combined with the absence of financial strain, had allowed her to enjoy a quality of life Emily had only dreamed of. They often spent evenings discussing Emily's new projects, her mother beaming with pride at her daughter's accomplishments. One evening, a little over 2 years after she had first walked into Sterling Holdings, Emily found herself in Robert Sterling's private office. The city lights twinkled below them like scattered diamonds. The atmosphere was different tonight, more personal, less formal. "Emily," Robert Sterling began, using her first name for the first time, his voice softer than usual. "The Beacon Hill project is a resounding success. It set a new standard for urban revitalization, not just for Sterling Holdings, but for the entire industry. You've proven yourself to be an extraordinary leader, a visionary who combines genuine empathy with ruthless efficiency." He paused, then looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a profound respect. "My current CEO, a longtime friend and colleague, is retiring at the end of the year. It's a planned transition, but it leaves a significant void. I've been searching for the right person to take the helm, someone who can lead Sterling Holdings into its next chapter, someone who embodies the values I believe are essential for true, impactful leadership." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The implications of his words hung in the air, immense and almost unbelievable. Robert Sterling leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Emily Davies, I am offering you the position of Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Holdings." The words reverberated in the quiet office, echoing the monumental shift in her life. From a waitress refusing to serve a rude man, to owning a diner, to directing a major division, and now to leading a multi-billion-dollar global corporation. It was an ascent that defied logic, a testament to a single, defining moment of courage and integrity. "Mr. Sterling," Emily finally managed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and humility. I don't know what to say. It's an incredible honor, but—" She trailed off, still grappling with the sheer scale of the offer. Robert Sterling chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "No buts, Emily. Your journey, your character, your achievements, they speak for themselves. You have demonstrated repeatedly that you possess the vision, the integrity, and the leadership to navigate any challenge. You're not just a CEO candidate. You're the embodiment of everything I believe true leadership stands for." He walked towards her, extending his hand. "This isn't about titles or prestige, Emily. It's about impact. It's about the ability to shape the future, to build, to innovate, to genuinely improve lives on a scale you can only imagine. And I believe, wholeheartedly, that you are the person to do it." Emily looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the city lights shimmering below. The path ahead was daunting, filled with challenges and immense responsibility. But she was no longer the timid waitress. She was a leader, forged in the crucible of unexpected opportunity, guided by an unwavering moral compass. She thought of her mother, of Mel's diner, of the elderly woman she had defended. Every step, every decision, had led her here. She took his hand, her grip firm and confident. "Mr. Sterling," Emily said, a profound sense of purpose filling her voice. "I accept. I won't let you down. And I promise you, I will lead Sterling Holdings with the same integrity and conviction that brought me here." Robert Sterling's smile widened, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. "I never doubted it, Emily. Never doubted it for a moment." The story of Emily Davies, the waitress who refused to serve a rude billionaire, culminated not just in owning a diner, but in leading an empire. Her journey was a living testament to the truth of Robert Sterling's words, that real leaders don't back down, and that the quiet strength of integrity can, indeed, reshape an entire world. Her legacy, far from being confined to a small diner, would now stretch across a vast landscape of urban renewal, innovation, and genuine human impact. proving that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the unwavering courage of one's convictions.